It's the battle for the ages. In one corner, we have Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. It's considered by many to be the best roller coaster in the world. In the other corner is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa. This is the new kid on the block, but is quickly building a fan base. Both attractions are hyper-hybrid roller coasters built by Rocky Mountain Construction. Alright, let's get into the ride stats. When we take a look over the ride stats, we see that Iron Gwazi takes down 4 of the categories, though not by much. Iron Gwazi is 2 miles per hour faster and 1 foot taller. Oh, it features a first drop that is 1 degree steeper. Steel Vengeance will steal 2 categories with the most inversions and longer track. Steel Vengeance is considerably longer, a little over 1,600 feet more of track. Each stat counts as a half point, so Steel Vengeance earns 1 point, while Iron Gwazi has 2. The view. Continuing on with the tradition, let's talk about the view from the top of both hyper coasters. Iron Gwazi, the chain lift starts to slow down as you crest the top of the hill, allowing you a little more time to soak in that amazing view. Also to realize that the track is disappearing right in front of you. Unfortunately, the view isn't that great. I mean, sure, any view from 200 feet in the air is always going to be interesting, but Steel Vengeance easily wins this category. Looking out over Lake Erie, the panoramic view that includes the park and Lake Erie is truly breathtaking. Even with that said, it's still only the 4th best view in the park, right behind Millennium Force, Magnum XL200, and Valraven. Stevie gets this point. First drop. Both roller coasters feature an incredible first drop, loaded with quality airtime. Steel Vengeance turned heads when it introduced a vertical plummet on a hyper coaster. Not to say that we haven't seen a vertical drop on a coaster over 200 feet, just the style of attraction made it unique, being steel track and wooden supports. Well, Iron Gwazi had to one-up them, well, in the stats that is, by making their first drop 91 degrees. All in all, I wouldn't say that one is actually better than the other. Because I've been on Steel Vengeance so many times, I'm tempted to give this point over to it, but honestly, they're very similar, so I think the fair thing is to make this category a tie. Airtime. If there is one category on today's list that truly belongs to Steel Vengeance, it has to be the airtime. There is no other roller coaster on the planet that has as many airtime moments that Steel Vengeance offers. This coaster is airtime moment right after another. It's not all the same either. You get some sustained airtime during the first third of the ride, then as you advance throughout the layout, it turns into more aggressive ejector airtime. Iron Gwazi, though still full of good moments of airtime, like that wave turn in that first Outer Bank turn, it just doesn't compare to the overall amount and quality that Steel Vengeance has to offer. Stevie, of course, gets this point. Ride intensity. I've had this argument in the past when discussing Steel Vengeance. Is that ride intense? I mean, it has a ton of ejector airtime, but it doesn't give me those quote-unquote intense feelings. Iron Gwazi, on the other hand, feels like a bat out of hell, slamming you into one element right after another. Other than Lightning Rod, I'd say that Iron Gwazi is the most intense RMC on the market. Just watch it as it flies through this element. Iron Gwazi is going to easily snag this point. Pacing. Iron Gwazi has to be one of the best paced coasters out there. It never misses a beat, keeping its breakneck speeds right into the brake run. The first half of the ride feels like it gets more aggressive and faster as you advance through the layout. Steel Vengeance, though it does have a solid layout and for the most part doesn't lose a beat. There are a couple notable dead spots, I'd say. The mid-course brake run is a dead spot, and that section of track just after the mid-course seems a little lackluster. Honestly, by the time you reach the final airtime bunny hills, I'm ready for the ride to be over. RMC restraints are not my favorite and can cause pain to the thighs during strong pops of ejector. The constant slamming into the restraints in Steel Vengeance does get old after a while, which is nice that Iron Gwazi has a little bit more variety. Gwazi gets this point. Best inversion. Steel Vengeance is kind of like a one-trick pony with its inversions. Well, technically you could say that about every RMC overall because they really like their 0G rolls. Steel Vengeance has a total of 4 inversions. 3 of them are 0G rolls with 1 quick, snappy 0G stall. Iron Gwazi, though technically the death roll is still a 0G roll, but since it's taken at a decline, it feels more aggressive than any other inversion by RMC. This is a great inversion, clearly the best inversion between the two coasters. Best moment. Iron Gwazi has the best inversion, but which coaster has the overall best moment? Iron Gwazi has a couple contender elements, including the death roll and wave turn that travels over the station. Steel Vengeance has a couple strong, good moments, but has really one great moment, and that's the giant outer bank turn. After 4 years of operating, that banked airtime hill is still one of my overall favorite moments of airtime. It's so good. Steel Vengeance gets this point. Operations. One of my biggest takeaways during my last trip to Busch Gardens Tampa was how bad I thought the operations were on Iron Gwazi. According to my data, Iron Gwazi was averaging about 3 minutes per dispatch, which isn't great at all. Now, I was there on a weekday, and it was clear that the ride wasn't fully staffed. Regardless, I still hear from others that this is still a problem on Iron Gwazi: slow operations. Steel Vengeance has had the benefit of being around for 4 years, so Cedar Point has had the time to really dial in their operations. I'm pleased to say that during my last visit, the staff operating Steel Vengeance were on point. They were sending the trains like no one's business. Average dispatch time was about 90 seconds, which is half as short as Iron Gwazi. Even when they were operating with 2 trains, dispatches sat around 2 minutes, which is still better than dispatches I saw on Iron Gwazi. Height restrictions. If you watched my vlog from Busch Gardens Tampa, my daughter Braylon, who is 7 years old, is tall enough to ride Iron Gwazi. However, Steel Vengeance, she is not. Iron Gwazi has a minimum height restriction of 48 inches, which is pretty good for an aggressive coaster like Iron Gwazi. Steel Vengeance, because it has these bulkier trains, has a minimum height restriction of 52 inches. This isn't too bad. It's basically on point with most roller coasters by Bolliger and Mabillard. However, between the two, Iron Gwazi is the winner of this category. Alright, the final tally comes to Iron Gwazi with 7 points and Steel Vengeance with 6. This was not the outcome I expected, but yeah, Iron Gwazi is the winner. I think which of the two you enjoy more will depend on a few factors. I personally still prefer Steel Vengeance over Iron Gwazi because I love the airtime and operations. However, after getting on Iron Gwazi, I can see that Steel Vengeance has its, dare I say, flaws. The layout is quite repetitive, but again, it does those airtime moments very well. Iron Gwazi has the disadvantage with the shorter layout, but its crazier, out-of-control layout, fast pacing, and couple strong moments of airtime make it world-class. I can see why some would prefer Iron Gwazi to Steel Vengeance. On a technical scale, Iron Gwazi is the winner of this duel basically because of the stats. This coaster barely beats out Steel Vengeance, but a win by an inch is still the same as a win by a mile. A win is a win. Well, thank you for watching today's coaster duel. Which roller coaster do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, click on that like button, and new to the channel, subscribe. That way you continue to get more great content brought to you by Extreme Thrills.